Hey everyone, Kevin here, and we are back with another round of me creating Pokémon themed after one of my favorite VTubers, Ironmouse. And I figured with her latest subathon going on, at least as of me making this video, I decided it would be a great opportunity to bring this challenge back. For anyone that hasn't seen that first video yet, I recommend checking that out first, of course. But to give a quick recap, I imposed this challenge on myself to create a Pokémon of every type, each one based on one of the many forms and models of Ironmouse. In the last video, I started with the base form, the fairy-typed Impip, and created evolutions for it based on the water, fire, and ice types as well. So to keep up with that momentum, this time we're tackling 5 more types for 5 more evolutions of Impip. This time, it'll be the electric, flying, dark, fighting, and steel types. So, with that explanation out of the way, let's get down to business, shall we? Now, the one we're going to start with today is the electric type, which I use Mouse's idol models as a base for. I feel like this makes for a decent, if not a bit loose of a connection due to how much electricity goes into performance from the lighting, to the cameras, to the music. The first thing I wanted to make sure that I got right was the pose, since I wanted it to capture the sort of cute and performative nature of this idol Pokemon. After deciding on that, this design really came down to what aspects of all of these designs I wanted to include in this Pokemon, since this is the first one that actually takes inspiration from multiple models that have a similar theme. That actually goes into a running theme I had trying to draw these. I found myself teetering on a fine line between making sure these resemble the models that they are based on without being over-designed as Pokemon. Mouse's models often have a lot of different details that help complete their concepts, but Pokemon, especially smaller ones like these, can't have too many small details like that, or they won't look like Pokemon anymore. To compromise with this one, I focused on simple frills that could reference the big dresses these idols have, markings that resemble the accessories on them, a full microphone for a tail, and horns that appear like metal, similar to Birthday Idol's crown. That last detail I think specifically helped bring this together and helped define this as an electric type, because I could justify it as being a conductive substance that helps harness this creature's electricity. On top of that, it helped me with the color scheme too, since I wanted to use the colors of Mouse's dresses while also making it apparent that this is an electric type. Making the metals gold like the accessories on Birthday Idol helped round things out and get that idea across by adding a splash of yellow amongst the pinks, blacks, and whites. Finally, for the name, I decided to call this one Cantario, based on the Spanish word cantar, the verb for singing, and the AEL suffix you see in many angelic names. So, with all that done, let's see the finished product. Cantario, the Performer Pokemon, an electric fairy type. This energetic evolution of Impip is known for its bright and sunny disposition and love for getting attention. It will maintain high levels of energy by generating electricity within its own body as it moves. When in battle, this Pokemon will use this electric charge to amplify its own voice to greater heights and overwhelm the opponent with flashy moves. This proclivity for the spotlight has led many trainers to guide Cantario towards Pokemon contests, where its talents arguably shine even brighter than they do in traditional battle. Regardless of its performance stage, Cantario will always give maximum efforts towards making anyone who gazes upon it smile. The next design we'll cover today is the fighting type evolution of Impip, and for this one I chose the Racing Princess model. I felt like since this model has a sporty motif going on that it has the strongest connection to the fighting type. Except maybe Mouse with Jotaro's hat, though that variant isn't really a full model. Anyway, given its typing, I wanted this one to have more of an action pose to emphasize that, and it took me a little bit of time to decide how I wanted that to look. There's actually a previous attempt to this that I scrapped because I didn't like it, but I made this much better pose after looking at Pikachu for a while as a reference, specifically Pikachu Libre. In this case, I wanted to reference Racing Princess by making the Pokemon's patterns look similar to parts of the outfit, kind of like others such as Cinderace and Gothitelle. After a few attempts, I decided on focusing on the checkered leggings, which I felt was a good move, especially since I wanted to include the extra fluff around the neck, with Mouse's little wings sticking out of it. That's one of my favorite things about this model, actually. I also included the end of the model's bubble wand on the tail, though in this case I found it actually looks more like a Champion Fighter's medal, furthering that concept I'm working towards here. Kind of funny how things worked out like that. The colors were another aspect of this design that I experimented with for a while before reaching a place that I like. Again, I wanted to both complement the pinks of this outfit while also alluding to the fighting type. So at first I started with the tan variant of this model's skin tone, but I ended up tweaking that to a brighter orange, which I felt was a better match. One other thing I did here as a bit of a twist was change the patterns on the face to resemble a luchador's mask. Although that isn't a part of the model I'm referencing, I think it helped to complete the concept for this Pokemon, making the fluff appear more like a wrestler's cape, and the tail similar to a champion's belt. Finally, as for the name, this one I called Velocio, coming from the root word velocity. I did that both because this model is a reference to racing and to show that this Pokemon is fast. This is probably one of the fastest evolutions of Impip, if not the fastest, and I really like how it came together. So, let's go take a look at the finished product. Velociel, the competition Pokemon, a fighting fairy type. For whatever reason, when evolving in this manner, Impip gains a burning passion for battle and self-improvement that quite possibly may never die out. In this new form, Velociel is known for constantly striving to display its physical capabilities, whether this is due to desire to prove itself to other trainers and Pokemon, or a genuine love of the sport. Regardless of circumstance, however, Velociel displays great feats despite its stature, being able to run faster than a speeding car and break boulders with its bare hands. Next up, we're going with the Dark type, and for this one I had to go with Mouse's Demon Goddess model as inspiration. It definitely exudes the darkest aura and most commanding presence, so I felt like it would be a perfect fit here. As far as personality goes, I wanted to make this Pokemon a similar kind of manipulator, a creature that's always cooking up some form of scheme regardless of whether or not things will work out in its favor. I could see a running joke in the Pokemon anime with that kind of premise. Maybe this one would pal around with Team Rocket and always act like it's in charge of them. As far as illustrating this premise though, I took the horns, fangs, and general color scheme of Demon Goddess while translating a few other aspects in different ways. For example, I made the ears flowing and droopy to reference her long flowing hair, and I made the tail more segmented like the bones on the model and its familiars. That one in particular turned Impip's tail into more of a scorpion stinger when I didn't intentionally have that in mind, but I love that it turned out that way. The part that I struggled with the most was the fur patterns, because most of Demon Goddess's decorative patterns I felt didn't work as well condensed into this smaller frame. I eventually settled on something simpler with that looks like ribs surrounding an upside down heart alluding to this Pokemon's darker nature. Speaking of which, this one is called Malevio, from the root word malevolent, since this is the most mischievous of Impip's evolutions. And with that, let's see how the little schemer looks in action. Malevio, the Manipulator Pokemon, a dark fairy type. For reasons unknown, Malevio will consistently boast a commanding personality, often believing that they are in charge of other people in Pokemon. Even when their carefully laid schemes do not go as intended, they will still show an air of superiority to save face as though everything is still according to plan. It is rumored to host dark magic since evolving this way, and is known to resort to extreme measures in order to ensure its own victory. Now that we've tackled the darkest member of the party, let's go to the opposite side of the spectrum and visit Mouse's angel forms, which I used to represent the flying type due to their large feathered wings. This also gave me an opportunity to draw this form in midair, which I thought made for an absolutely adorable outcome. Most of the unique details of this one revolve around using feathers to illustrate some of the layered clothing on these models. You'll also see that I tried at first to make the horns turn into a halo, but I quickly realized that was just going to look weird, so I just made them more outstretched and gave them a crystalline texture like you see on Bloom Angel over there. I mirrored that on the tail as well because I thought it gave some more variety that this design needed at the time. Much like Malevio, this is another design that allowed me to mix things up in terms of color, since these models also focus more on whites and purples. The really interesting part of this one that I think maybe took the most time was when it came to coloring the feathers. I researched other winged Pokemon like Pidgeot, for example, to see how Ken Sugimori paints feathers, and he applies this sort of layered texture that almost makes the feathers look like they're made out of other, smaller feathers. So I tried to emulate that here as best I could, and I think it came out really nice in the end. Now, again, to contrast the dark nature of our previous Pokemon, this one I called Divinio, referencing the root word divine due to the angelic motif with its inspiration. And as we wrap things up here, let's see the finished design and segue into our last of this bunch. Divinio, the angelic Pokemon, a flying fairy type. As one of the few members of its evolutionary family that gain wings through evolving, Divinio fill their hearts with joy by exercising their newfound freedom to take to the skies above. This fresh skill set also seems to give these Pokemon a new perspective on the world around them, by allowing them to see things from a bigger picture at a bird's eye view. As a result, they are known for valuing the lives and happiness of others even above their own sometimes, and they will use their impressive flight speed to rush into situations where they can help others and protect them from harm. As such, Divinio are seen as a sign of good luck and a symbol of generosity for all. Last but not least, we're going to create a Steel-type Impip evolution using Mouse's Yokai Hunter model as a base. I actually originally wanted to use the Super Sentai concept model that Artgun made for Steel, but I decided on Yokai Hunter instead because I felt it represented a similar concept of a warrior fighting evil with swords and armor. However, I did still keep that Sentai concept in mind and mixed a little bit of inspiration into this Pokemon's armor, because I like that design a lot too, even though it's not an official model. Yet. Anyway, to get Yokai Hunter across here, I made this one's horns match the models a bit more, and made the traditional Japanese-style ties around Mouse's hair and waist a defining feature on the Pokemon. Its ears gain armor along with the rest of its body, and more closely resemble the ponytail and ribbons on Yokai Hunter. I could even see this Pokemon using them as makeshift weapons if necessary with how much space they take up, but I think they help to give this design its own identity. In addition to that, the helmet around its head takes a bit of inspiration from both the masks of Yokai Hunter and the helmet of Super Sentai, while also showing this Pokemon's determined expression. As for its name, this one I decided to call Centennial, which is actually another leftover from when this was originally more of a Sentai reference. However, I still feel like that works here because you could say it also comes from the word Sentinel, as in a guardian protector. So, with all that said, let's round things out today with this finished Steel-type evolution. Centennial, the Guardian Pokemon, a Steel Fairy type. Gaining an impressive set of armor upon evolving this way, Impip transforms into formidable warriors with valiant hearts when deciding to become Centennial. These Pokemon follow a strict code of honor and duty, and vow to protect their loved ones with all the strength at their disposal. They use their tails as bladed weapons with nigh unmatched prowess and swordsmanship. Even in failure, Centennial's protective spirit will not waver, and it will make its mission to repay its own inadequacies to its trainer tenfold. And would you look at that, another 5 Pokemon types of Ironmouse in the bag. We're a little over halfway done at this point. Again, thank you all for watching my videos like this one, and special thanks to Ironmouse herself for being such a great positive influence on the VTuber community. Assuming the subathon is still going on when I finish this, go raise that timer! Or if you're watching this after the fact, donate plasma and support the Immune Deficiency Foundation. That works too. Every little bit will help immunocompromised people like Ironmouse. But otherwise, I'll be back with more of these again another day, so feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more of that. But until then, I will see you all again next time.